Today, I'm going to show you the top 16 priorities for Gen X white collar employees and the top two that AI suggests you should focus on first. When facing a big challenge, knowing where to start is often the hardest first step. Today, we're going to go over all the areas Gen X employees need to address, but we're going to focus on the two most important. One that makes you more valuable, and the other which makes you the last person to be let go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. If you're a Gen X white collar employee whose career path is heading in directions you didn't anticipate, you've come to the right place. Welcome home. Today, we're going to talk about the different areas of focus that every Gen X white collar employee should take and should address in order to prepare themselves for any number of positive paths. But it's often that first step that is the hardest. I remember when I was newly married and I got a job at Nickelodeon Studios. And one of the entry-level jobs there is to be, in any entertainment job, was to be a gopher or a runner. And that was me. It was not sexy. You basically ran errands for anybody that needed it, and you also made sure that the cast and crew had food throughout the day and got their lunches and things like that. It's an entry level job. Everyone in the entertainment industry has probably done it. Those people in the industry who've done it before understand that it can be very unglamorous, but they also know that's part of the process. I was working on a show that was very popular, and in TV, you want to hold on to the shows that are popular because that means the work is going to continue. So no one who was working on this show wanted to leave this show. So the option for upward mobility was very difficult. But fortunately, at one point, one of the people that was in a role above me wanted to do something else, try something else in the company. So he left. And I told my wife about it. I called her and I said, yeah, listen, this person left this position, and I think I should follow up on that. But I am a person who doesn't like confrontation. So I always get squeamish about things like that, which is silly now, but back then especially. But my wife called me like 10 minutes later and she said, well, did you talk to him about the job? And I'm like, no, I just told you about it. I'll get to it. And she's like, go talk to them. And I was like, why aren't I talking to them? This is a position that's open on a show that's really popular. I can finally stop getting food for people. So after I hung up the phone, I went in and talked to the unit manager who was in charge of filling that position. And I said, hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm interested in that opening. And I ended up getting that job, which was great. But it was that first step that was very, very difficult, especially for me. And so, what I want to try to do is help us Gen Xers kind of define all the areas that we should really invest our time in so that our decisions and our focus is intentional. I think we spend so much time today just kind of, I don't know, scrolling through, social media feeds. And I call that, my wife was scrolling through her phone the other night and I said, that's like when at late night when cable was the thing and you used to just flip through cable channels over and over again and you'd cycle through the whole thing, somehow hoping that the third or fourth or 12th time something interesting would catch your eye. And now we just kind of do that with phones. So in the first episode, I asked AI what it thought were the areas of concern for Gen X white collar employees. And you can download that document that it created on our Skool community. On the first episode, you'll be able to get it there. The link is in the show notes. So I took that information and other information I had gathered and researched, and I put it into 4 categories. And I'm going to go through each of these, and we're going to highlight the 2 that AI and I agree are the most important for us to focus on. Okay, so the first area is what I call foundations, and this is something that applies across any sort of job situation you have. It's basically being prepared for anything. And I live in Florida and we have hurricanes a lot. We had 2 hit last year. The power companies, if it believes that you're in the direct path of a storm, will proactively turn off the power. Over the years of living here in Florida and owning a house, it's something that my family and I have gotten really good at. So if we know that we need to set up a generator, doesn't matter what time of night, we've had to do it at all times of night and any sort of weather condition. we can get it set up and running within 15 minutes. We don't have to think about it because there's this rule that says in a crisis, you're not who you want to be, you're who you're prepared to be. And who we are prepared to be is through practice and repetition. So the foundation area are those areas of focus that will be applicable across all situations, but especially if things go temporarily bad. So the first area is financial prep. Now listen, I'm not an accountant. This is not financial advice. I can just tell you what I did. My wife and I have always tried to be really responsible with our money. And so one of the things that we try to make a habit is to be very, again, intentional about where we spend our money and where we don't. So one of the first things when it comes to financial prep is to reduce your debt if possible, especially with the higher interest credit cards or loans or things like that. You also want to tie that with limiting your spending. Again, being intentional about where you spend your money. You may not want to make dinner at home, but it's a lot cheaper than going out. One of the things that I do a lot is I will do over the weekend a meal prep for the week of different meals. I work from home, so it allows me to, just go to the kitchen and get something. But either way, I make a week's worth of meals, either breakfast or lunch, or the fixings for those things that I can quickly put together. And it's a heck of a lot cheaper than going out and also a lot healthier. So it's making those specific decisions to try your best to limit your spending. One of the things that really helped us a lot is we've identified what is the bare minimum that we can survive on, for electricity, mortgage, things like that. And this was really helpful because I got laid off in 2020, like a lot of people. And so we went through this process and updated what our minimum, survival level was for the situation we were in. And it cut a lot out. I mean, we got rid of, cable, we cut the cord and all these other things. We got rid of everything that was unnecessary. And we knew what that number was. I needed to make this certain number in order for us to be okay. And it's funny because my next job was exactly that number. So we felt very blessed, but it was still a struggle. And then we had to, I had to start working my way up again. So it was really helpful to know what that number is before you need to figure it out. Because in any of these situations, especially job situations, you don't want to have to make these decisions, these really, really important decisions when you're mentally stressed or emotionally freaking out. We people don't make wise decisions through emotion. So we try to prep ourselves by doing as much of this ahead of time. We were still freaking out, we were still concerned, but at least these critical, basic, foundational pieces of information we already knew. And two other things that we did is we always look at our 401k to see the risk involved with our investments. And the reason being is that we knew people who just kind of like set it and forget it with their 401k. And as they got older, they never shifted out of high risk investments to low risk investments. And then when the housing crash happened, they had not made those changes and they lost almost all of their retirement because of that personal experience with the people we knew. It was something that we didn't want to happen to us. So we always revisit that every once in a while. And the final thing is if you can afford to do this, if you've reduced your debt and you limit your spending, you may have some extra money there. Try to put aside as much as you can to have like an emergency fund, maybe 3 months, 6 months, best case with the job market right now, it may take a year to get a new job. Whatever you can do to put aside money for that emergency fund, hopefully that will meet that minimum survival requirement of income. The more you have of that, the better in case of an emergency. The second item under foundations is healthcare options. Look, as we get older, healthcare becomes more important. I remember talking to my mom when she was in her 80s, and I said, "Mom, what's it like to get older?" She said, "Well, your brain remains like you're 18 or 20 years old. It's just that your body falls apart around you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks." But you know what? It's true, right? So the older we get, it's human nature. We're going to need more medical care, just the way it works, the wear and tear on the body. One of my favorite lines in any movie is from Indiana Jones, where he's talking to in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he's talking to Marion, his ex girlfriend, whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's talking to her, and she talks about how worn out he is, and he's like, "It's not the years, honey; it's the mileage." Some of us in our our time here have traveled more, had a lot more mileage on the body than others. So healthcare becomes really important. So it's one of these things where you just be proactive in it. If you're afraid that there's potential layoffs, you can talk to HR about what sort of post layoff options there are. Depends on whether you're laid off or if you get severance or something like that. There's a lot of variables, but you should talk to your HR department and see what sort of COBRA options they have for potential continued coverage for a period of time after you're no longer with the company. Also, and this is something I want to do for a future episode. I just got to do the research on it. But I want to look at if you're laid off and you need healthcare, what are the options that are out there? Whether it's the Affordable Care Act options, what those costs are, whether it's better to pay for cash and not have insurance. Sometimes there's a lot of discounts there. Also, pretty scary. So anyway, whatever your situation is, research as much as you can about the different healthcare options. Some areas offer telehealth care at a much cheaper rate than like in person care. I know that places like Amazon and Walmart have these care options. Again, I need to do the research on it because it's important to me and my family. So I'll have more about that in a future episode. Also, as when I got laid off, I had to go through the Florida unemployment process. So you should look into that ahead of time. Just know how it works. What is the website? What are the requirements? How many interviews or resumes do you need to send out to qualify? How much do they pay a week? What are the benefits the state offers for this interim period where you're unemployed? Just know that ahead of time so you know what to expect. Find out what they're going to give you from an assistance perspective, so you know the difference between that and your minimum survival income requirement. So just good information to have, so you're not freaking out and trying to figure it out in a highly emotional state. And the final one is just mental health. Um, like I said before, you don't make good decisions when you're emotional. I was with someone in an elevator and the elevator got stuck. And this person I knew very well, and I never knew that this person had a fear of being stuck in an elevator. I'd known this person for decades. And so I could literally see the rationality leave their eyes. It went from I'm a rational person in an elevator to I am completely panicked. Like it was just all fear filled their eyes. And so that's just the way emotions work. It's part of the survival, the fight or flight or, things like that. It's part of the survival instinct. So one of the things that I have found just as a simple way to help me with my mental health, again, I'm not a psychologist or whatever. So this is seek professional help if required, obviously. But simple things like walking. I try to walk 3 to 5 times a week if possible, a couple of miles, because just movement helps. I think about I've been doing a lot of thinking about this lately, is about the nature of humans, right? Our human nature. Have been a lot of different humans like Neanderthals and Denisovans, I think. I don't know how to pronounce it, but there's been different varieties of humanity throughout time. Homo sapiens are the ones that won. We've survived the longest. So we love to explore. We are very mobile. We're willing to go anywhere. We want challenges. Our biggest, I bet if you were to look back right now on the thing you're most proud of, it is connected directly to the thing you sacrificed the most. Because throughout our human nature, the Homo sapiens human nature, has had to struggle. It's hunting, it's trying to survive, it's fending off threats and all these other things. And so I think anytime you can get back in connection with is with what is our normal human nature, I think that often ties directly with, at least for me, a better place with my mental health. So just getting out in nature and walking. I mean, they've done studies where, and it's funny because I just look back on like, well, of course, we've all these benefits you get from being in nature make total sense because as a human species, we've spent 99.9% of our time in nature. It's only in the very short period of time that we built cities and hidden ourselves from nature. But there's things about vitamin D from the sun. It's nutrients that you get from the soil if you walk with bare feet, things like this. Because that's why our species survived, is that we did get all these benefits from being outside in nature. So during these tough times, is don't isolate yourself. Just try to get out in nature. Just take a walk. It's good. It gets the blood flowing. You can think. You can contemplate. It's really, really important. And of course, if you need to professional assistance, and of course, take care of that as well. And one last thing about this, one thing I realized with the advent of social media and scrolling on your phone and things like that is that we no longer contemplate things. You know, we're a society of distraction. And I think when you're in a situation where you're worried about your job or you're planning your future or anything like that, you want to be intentional about decisions. I think you need to contemplate. And so I think for me, those walks, I just, it like my brain kind of just slows down and it gives me like avenues of thought because I'm not distracted by little micro dopamine hits that I'm getting from my phone. So when it comes to mental health, do what's best for you, either by seeking help from people to help you get through the rough patches, rely on family and friends, surround yourself with nature, just move, take walks, and don't isolate yourself. But again, I'm not an expert. Just have to say that because of lawyers. Okay, so that's the first section, foundations. So financial prep, healthcare, understanding unemployment, and mental health. The second area of focus is value. What we're looking for here is to either recognize, track, or increase your personal value to your current employer or your future employer. So the first of this is to upskill, to work on your skills. And this is the number one thing that AI, and I agree, is an area of focus. So we're going to go into that into more detail in a second. Another thing is just to make sure you track your experience when it comes to job searches and things like that. No one really cares, especially with our generation. No one's going to care about things you did more than 10 years ago, more than likely, unless it's extraordinary. But make sure you already have the dates of your different positions, all of your experience that you've had. Focus on achievements, not the tasks that you were responsible for, but the achievements you had. Think of impact, why what you did was so important and valuable. So I'm sure you've heard of this. It's a thing that's been out there for a while called SMART goals, but they're specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, and they're time bound. In other words, they have to be done in a specific amount of time. Just look at your history as through that kind of prism. It's a good place to start when you're trying to track your experience and identify the skills that can transfer from one company to a next, for one job to a next. If you're really good with organization, well, that's a skill that can transfer anywhere. If you're really good with process, that's a skill that can transfer anywhere. If you're just good at talking to people, interpersonal skills, that can transfer. So also identify those. Just track your experience and look for those areas that you really shined in a way that's impactful. So the next one just follows perfectly with this, which is to document your successes. Keep a file of the wins that you've had or emails that talk about your successes or how helpful you've been, any achievements that you've made. Document all of those things. And again, turn that praise into measurable success. Again, you could start with that SMART goals and move on from there. But turn it into something that anyone, no matter what job you're looking for, can understand the value of what you've done. And the last thing here is one of my favorite things. And to me, I call it be the firefighter, not the arsonist. So if there's a big challenge going on at work, I've always loved to be in the person to go in and try to fix it if I've been asked to do that because I didn't create the problem. So I'm not the arsonist. The best thing I can do is put out that fire, solve the problem, be the hero, right? The worst thing, which would be unfortunate, is that I didn't make any difference, but I still didn't start the fire. So the risk of being the firefighter, not the arsonist, is very small. But the benefits, the rewards, if you can solve that problem and put out the fire, so to speak, and then restore what was set on fire, well, the rewards there are great, and you can only be the hero. So I love that situation when it comes up. And so if you find yourself where there's an opportunity for you that's in an area that you can really help solve the problem, if you get the chance, be the firefighter. So the next area of focus is to plan your exit. And I remember the phrase, it's always easier to find a job when you have a job. Again, because you don't have the pressure, the emotional stress, you don't have all the other external factors here. And you can again be intentional on what type of job you would like, whether it's similar to the one you have just at a different company, or if you want to make a shift or try a higher level job, The point is that sadly, no job is secure. If our generation has lived through 9/11 and lived through the housing crash, and we've also lived through, all of us recently, the COVID virus. So the impact on industry and the type of businesses that were successful before that, and the kinds that were successful after, there were massive shifts that were completely out of our control. You want to make sure to, I think, plan your exit, or at least keep your eye on things that are out there in case you need to head down that path. If you hear there's going to be potential job cuts at the company you're working for, well, already, be out there looking, see what's available. Have bookmarked those types of jobs that you want to pursue. So one of the most important ways, I think, to plan your exit is to identify and build up your network. When I worked at Nickelodeon, it was a great training ground for a lot of people who were new to the industry. This was especially true for people who had worked in front of the camera for a period of time, but that phase of their life was probably over. They'd aged out of whatever they were done and known for before, but they wanted to stay in the industry. It's the business they knew. So they wanted to move behind the camera. And so it was not uncommon at Nickelodeon to see people that you'd recognize want to produce or direct or things like that. And some of those people were successful, some weren't. And then there were people who got a foot in the door because they knew somebody. And that always happens, right? And it's not necessarily a bad thing. But through this process, what I realized was that who you know gets you in the door, and what you know or how you do it allows you to stay there. Networking, human interaction, connection is the best way to get your next job. Because if you know me and I know you and you need a position filled and I know someone that can fill that position that I feel is right for it, are you going to trust me more than some random resume that's, you find in an inbox or given to you from HR? Yeah, you're going to take my recommendation into consideration. So that network of people is really, really important. And I think these are like two levels of networks. One is people that you really know that could have that conversation where if you were to hear from them, you would just believe it and say, "Yep, I believe you. I'll take a look at that person." And then there's that network of people that you hope to connect with at that level, but you're just reaching out. So I see this a lot on LinkedIn, where you'll see people that are. I get people trying to connect with me all the time. Like, I don't know you, and I'm not special. I don't know why they're trying to connect with me, but I'm like, I don't know you, so I don't. I'm just trying to build up and focus on the people that I've had experience with. My friends at my previous jobs, they know me, I know them. That to me, that's a much more valuable connection. But I also understand if you have a future goal, you want to get into a different industry or you want to move up the food chain quicker by changing jobs, then you're going to want to connect with maybe someone at that place you want to go, or someone that can mentor or help you get to the places you want to go. So I totally understand that. But the network is the most important aspect of planning your exit and finding that next job. Also, you want to keep your resume updated. So make sure you keep it updated with the latest information, your latest accomplishments and wins. You can also ask AI to help develop your resume. And if you want to stay in a certain industry or move to a different one, of course, every job you apply for, you want to highlight the areas of your history, of your experience that are best suited for that role. So AI can help you do that. So it certainly doesn't hurt to put up your resume and say, I'm currently a programmer, but I want to get into, personnel management. How do I take my experience as a programmer and highlight those areas that apply to personnel management? And then AI can give you some drafts on that, and then you could tweak it yourself. Now, depending on the industry you're in, personal brand may or may not be important. It seems to me that LinkedIn, everyone kind of has their own personal brand. It's the stuff you put on under your picture, right? What is it you do? And the more niche, I think, the better. If you just say, I'm really good at marketing, well, that's one thing. But if you were to say, I'm really good at marketing for construction companies, that's another. Then, if you're looking for a job in that area, or the people who have construction companies that need marketing that do that sort of work, then if they see that you're specialized in that area, that's going to help. The personal brand is basically, it highlights what you do that is specific to you. And finally, I think it's also helpful if you had a lot of experience, Gen Xers, we should be able to do this, is to actually offer to mentor other people. I always think you receive by giving. That's me. So I try to give as much as possible. It's the reason this podcast exists because I see what has happened to so many people I care about and it drives me nuts. And I want to change the conversation about the value of Gen Xers in the workforce. So I just want to help our generation of workers promote ourselves by changing the narrative and finding the skills and the paths for us to take so that we can prove just how well awesome we are. And I mean that. So I think mentorship is really, really important. We have skills that other people can use. And I think through that, being generous and being helpful and helping the next generation, I think that's really, really valuable. And also, you'll probably, it shouldn't be the goal of this, but the outcome of that is also, you could find some good connections within the different industries. But do it because you just want to help. You know, I'm sure people helped you, and it was really, really important in your developments. And so, be that person for someone else. And I think if we give, doors will open. That's just me. And the last section is your next job. As I mentioned before, it's easier to find a job when you have a job. So, you can quietly set up alerts on LinkedIn or do some, reaching out if you're afraid that that sort of exposure would put your job at jeopardy in your current position. You could do things quietly, reach out to friends, reach out to different people in your network to see if there's opportunities out there that, sometimes there's future opportunities in companies that haven't been posted. And through that network, you may be able to get an in, like again, who maybe get in the door and then at least get an interview for that. Another option, which I think we really need to think about, is you could buy a business, an existing business, and it doesn't even have to be a sexy business. Baby boomers, the largest generation ever, I think, in human history, started a lot of businesses and a lot of them are retiring. And so what they're looking for is some sort of nest egg to help them enjoy their retirement. And a lot of them have built up a business that they don't want their employees to lose their jobs. And so they've done all the hard work. If it's a successful business, they've done all the hard work. They've established the marketplace. They've figured out what is the need within that marketplace, and they've provided a solution at a price point that works. They just can't do it anymore. So there's different sites online like Buy Biz Sell and things like that where you can look for businesses that are for sale. And if you're going to buy a business, obviously, again, not an expert here, but you want to do the due diligence with looking over the paperwork and having lawyers look at things and CPAs look at things. But the point is, there's never been a better time in history to buy an existing business because a whole generation, the largest generation of entrepreneurs and business builders want to get out of it. And it takes a long time to sell a business. So there's plenty of opportunity. Look for businesses that you think you could add value to if through your own personal experience or just technological experience. A lot of the smaller businesses do not have a lot of technological interconnectivity. Whether it's through notifications to customers or reaching out, letting people know about their upcoming appointments, things like that. So there's opportunities there. There's a woman online I listen to a lot. Her name's Cody Sanchez. She talks about this. She's all about small business. So you can look her up. She's really good. Just think out of the box there. It could be really, really exciting. I've been looking for specific businesses that I would be interested in. I've come across some, they just haven't worked out, but I'm always looking, right? Can't hurt. I wouldn't mind owning a business that already makes money. Wouldn't you? Yeah. Another thing too is if you want to start your own business, you could always start small with a side hustle. It's a great way to start. It's a great way to see if your idea works, if the hole in the market that you're feeling is actually true. Figure out what the price points are and things like that. It's one of the things that I've been helping my son with his mixology business. We've tried a lot of different things. A lot haven't worked. A lot have. So we're just figuring out what that space is like, and so he can make income on that on the side, or if he ever needs to, he could turn the dial up and try to make a full-time income. So side hustles are a great way to see if your ideas, your experience opens up avenues of where you may start a small business, a part-time business, and maybe that can grow if you need a next job. Maybe it's the one that you've created. And that gets to my last one, which is to start a business, entrepreneurship. It's the second thing that that AI said was the most important we should focus on. And I agree with that because I think our best chance in this very volatile space is to start our own businesses. Again, we have to answer a need in the marketplace. But through our experience, I think we should be able to identify that pretty well. And also, with our interactions and learning and developing our skills in AI, I mean, I think it's a no brainer. But some people aren't entrepreneurs. My wife hates entrepreneurship, but I have siblings that love entrepreneurships, and nieces and nephews as well. So I'm going to research more and to talk more about their personal experiences. May have one of them on because I know some of them have been very, very successful as an entrepreneur. But it's a different mindset. So if you want to get involved with entrepreneurship, but you don't want to lead, you don't want to be a captain, you can always partner with someone that is very entrepreneurial, and you guys agree on what the hole in the market you want to fill, and then you work together to provide it. The only advice I would have there, again, not a lawyer or anything like that, but I heard a phrase which I think is pretty accurate. Is like if you ever go in business with someone, you're basically getting married, and so plan your divorce before you get married. In other words, agree with each other what an exit from the business would be by each other, so that for whatever reason, whether it's personality or just change in life circumstances, what exiting that partnership would mean. Do it before there's anything at risk, because you won't get the emotions involved and in trying to figure it out. What the split should be when you're going through a crisis. So I think entrepreneurship is really, really important, and we're going to get into more about that in just a second. So one of the things that I love to do is process. I'm a process guy. I like analyzing processes. I like fixing them. One of the things that was kind of like an unofficial job for me at a previous company was either to start up a new effort or to go in and fix or better align a team into the greater processes of the department. So either way, it's like I look at the processes or I have to define the processes, and then I look for efficiencies. And then like there was, if a team has been isolated or is new to a department and you have to integrate them into the department's current, processes. Well, that's an effort. Everyone is afraid of change. So you got to really explain, why this is important, why it's valuable, and then help guide that team into these new processes that everyone else is using. And then together, it makes the entire department better if everyone's heading in the same direction. Or if you're developing a new area of focus that again has to align with that department and push it forward to get toward its goals. So I love that. That's something I've always done. Thankfully, I didn't know I liked that, but my bosses recognized I was good at it, and so they always put me in those positions previously. And so I do that now. It's something I'm always looking to do. Is try to help out and identify processes that could be improved. And one of the ways that's really interesting to me about this, and this could just be me, but you see when people write down processes like in a Word document, that is always best case scenario. It almost never takes into consideration something going wrong in the process. So you'll see like, well, I do this and then I send it to this group and they do this, and then it gets approved by this person and then it goes here and then it's implemented. And so I always will take those Word documents and meet with people, and I'll turn them into like a Visio diagram with swim lanes of ownership and whatnot. And then I'll get to that. Well, it says here in the Word document that it gets approved, but what if it doesn't get approved? Then what happens? They're like, oh, well, gosh, well, then we have to do blah, blah, blah. And they know the process. It's just not written down anywhere. So I love that challenge. I love just cleaning up processes. I don't know. It's weird. Everyone that I've worked with thinks that's weird that I enjoy that so much, but there we go. But what's so funny about this is this connects with upskilling and one of the challenges with AI in business. So I was reading this article from Axios, and I printed it out, and it's called Behind the Curtain, Slow, Hard AI. And it's basically a woman from Accenture has done a lot of analysis on the challenges facing companies that are trying to integrate AI into their business. And one of the biggest challenges is that people, I think, assumed or it wasn't clear that if I just spin up AI and we just start inputting things, that AI will help us find those efficiencies. But the big problem that these companies are having, especially larger companies, is that they don't have their processes documented anywhere. So how are you going to find those efficiency gains? So then you have to take the time to write them all out so you can put them in AI and then only to make them different and hopefully better. Right? So a lot of these companies are really struggling with the success of AI because they don't have the foundational information required to maximize AI. And so I think this is a window for us. There's a window in here because at some point the overall process will be understood, the needs will be understood across industries, and people who want to integrate with AI are going to be proactively trying to basically give the requirements necessary for AI to work well, which is what the hell do you guys do? What's your processes? What are the areas of concern? Where are the bottlenecks? So let me read some from this article. And I got this full. I mean, I was able to print this thing out, so I got the full thing. But when I tried to pull it up on my browser, it was now behind a paywall. So I don't understand how that happened. But anyway, let me read you the important stuff. CEOs are beyond obsessed with AI, but implementing it to immediately save money and boost productivity is frustratingly difficult. This matters because it will take a few years to move beyond the slow, hard phase for most companies, because only by changing the mindsets of leaders and the complex processes inside companies can you truly unlock explosive growth. So, this is important because this appears to be the challenge of implementing AI here. It's a lack of good documentation. It's a lack of knowledge about the processes of how things work. So the time that it takes between a company understanding what is required and these good AI installations, this is our window where if you have skills in that area, if you know AI and you're a good process person, you know what? Then go in and say, all right, I know. Let's write down your processes, and then I know how to use them and put them in AI and clean them up and fix them. So great opportunity there. The Accenture consultant went on to say that AI at an enterprise level is very difficult. CEOs recognize it's less about the technology and more about the willingness to truly invent the work and the workforce. Because this is a lot of change here, potential change, probably for the benefit of the company, not so much for employees, maybe, but they have something interesting to say about that. Accenture surveyed 3,000 global executives and found that 85% of C suite leaders plan to increase AI spending this year and expect big results, right? They want this turned around quickly. One likely casualty of this may be related to jobs. So, because companies plan to invest heavily in training employees to use AI, but know that a good number of them won't make the transition fast enough or succeed quick enough. So, again, this is an opportunity. Be one of those people that is adaptable. If you're learning AI now, be that person in the company. It's like, I can do this, I'll take it on. And it allows you to stick around hopefully longer. And you can actually implement AI at scale without cleaning up the complicated processes. Again, garbage in, garbage out. If you have clean processes, you could put them in and have clean processes coming out. If you have crappy processes or just generalized processes, you're not going to get any benefit from the investment of AI. And AI eventually will be able to do a lot of the task driven work that a lot of employees do. So there will be a risk there as far as job retention. But they also say that, and CEOs believe this, that after this rough transition period from pre-AI integration to post-AI integration, that there will be a whole nother set of jobs that really haven't been identified yet of how to help companies that have AI. So again, if you start learning AI now in the area of your experience, in the area of your expertise, to be one of those people to come into a company that has AI to help it continue explore the benefits of AI for that company. So I found that really, really interesting. So all the companies are looking for these benefits they heard AI is going to give them, but they're just finding out now all the requirements and work they have to do ahead of time to actually get those benefits. It's that gray area that could be our best friend. So when it comes to upskilling, here's some recommendations from AI. So thanks, AI. The first thing is to identify one or two skills that you think are in need, like the knowledge of AI tools, leadership, data analysis, process documentation, things like that. And then set aside some dedicated time to explore and learn those AI platforms that align with your experience or the job that you want to have. Now, in the previous episode, the second one, we listed all the current list of AI tools and how they align with different areas of focus. So again, that's available on the second episode. on my Skool community. So please go down there, sign up on the Skool community. It's free. And then you can download that information, help you know where to look if you haven't looked already. And then, because one of the challenges with AI stuff or just doing anything on the side is people start and they stop because they don't get those wins. So try to get small wins. Find those little successes that you can identify, apply AI, and see the benefits of. And then you'll start to see the power of it. And then you'll be able to grow and grow more. You'll be able to try more things, more complex things. And then that understanding of the tool will increase, and then your expertise will increase. So the low hanging fruit in this sort of experience or experiment, I should say, is look for things that are time consuming, processes that are repetitive, or processes or challenges that require a lot of brainstorming. You need a lot of going back and forth, thinking about different ideas, trying to figure out the solution. AI is really good at those three things. So you can use these three simple frameworks. Can AI help me decide the next step or how to approach these things? Can AI make what I'm looking at faster? Can it improve its efficiency? And the third one is, can AI improve my quality? So here's some really simple examples of things you could try just to get started on learning and upskilling. Ask AI to create meeting notes from a whole bunch of bullet points, a messy presentation. Another is you could take like a boring PowerPoint and ask it to turn into an engaging summary. And another thing is you could ask it to research industry trends in the area of your focus, but to present it to you in just plain English, simple, understandable, I don't know, high school level. I think newspapers used to write at sixth grade level. I'm not saying you're at sixth grade level, but the point is to just ask it to present that perhaps technical or complex information in a simple way. These are really easy tasks you can do in the beginning part of learning AI that will actually see the output. And this output could be applied potentially in your job right now, or if you're building your own business or whatever. Any of these steps could be applied either in your current job or your future job. And it also will help you get some wins so that you're more inclined to continue to learn AI. And don't be afraid to ask your AI platform of choice how to get to the destination you want to reach in AI. Say, look, I want to learn this. I want to be an expert in this in AI. Give me a learning path. How do I get there? How do I work with you as my teacher to get where I need to go? Give me the examples, the tasks that I can do. AI can easily be your partner in this experience, in the upskilling process. So ask it, it'll tell you. Now, as you're starting this upskilling journey, one thing that I came across was so interesting. I talked about it in the first episode about AI and its hallucinations. And then basically it means that it's made up an answer. And people are like, why is it making up an answer? And so the funny thing is I found this article, and yes, I printed it out from Euronews, and it talks about that the short version of this article, which is called "Why Do AI Models Make Things Up or Hallucinate?" And the answer is when they were first developing these large language models, when they were developing the chatbots, they wanted to get answers. And so it got rewarded for giving answers, either the right answer or the wrong answer. It's kind of like if you were to take a test in school and you could get partial points or the same points for filling in a bubble on the test, uh, even if it was the wrong answer. That's basically how they rewarded AI in the beginning. And so it does that. It's like, well, I'm not going to just leave it blank. So it'll tell you something, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's correct or accurate. So the way they say to resolve this problem, I love this. This is from OpenAI itself. It says to limit hallucinations, users could instruct the large language model or the AI to respond with, I don't know, if it doesn't know the answer. What a thought. Are you kidding me? So, yeah, hey, don't lie to me. Just tell me you don't know. It's like talking to your kids, man. Although I will say, talking to my kids, I don't know, was not a good answer. It wasn't a valid answer. They had to explain themselves. Why did you throw that against the wall? I don't know. Not a good answer. So I did expect full answers from my living human being children. But with AI, it gives answers because it's rewarded for giving answers, even if they're untrue. So if you find that to happen during your upskilling process, you could say, hey, you know what? If you don't know, just tell me you don't know. Let's start there. It's crazy. It's crazy that you have to ask it to do that. Anyway, all right, let's move on to the second and last piece here, which is entrepreneurship. Now, the one thing that I've learned in 30 years of corporate life is that job security is a lie. As we've talked about, anything can happen in business. So whether internally or externally to that business, and so changes are always made. But there's no better time in human history to start a business. You can learn anything. You have the entire universe of information on your phone, and most of it's for free. You can look at any video or download any document and read about how to do anything. There's all these different avenues and ways to generate income, whether it's online or offline. It's never been easier. There are successful options no matter which path you take, whether you start your own business or buy an existing one. Because I think being in the front seat of this AI bandwagon is critical to our current and future employment. But it doesn't necessarily rule out any risk. I came across this story, which was interesting and kind of predictable. And this is from MSN. And this is from a lady who worked at a bank in Australia. And she worked for 25 years at Australia's largest bank and revealed that she unintentionally helped train the AI system that eventually replaced her. That hurts. She was unaware that her role in creating scripts and testing the responses of the bank's AI chatbot would lead her to losing her job. So there's risks out there, even if we're on the forefront of AI. But my goal is to make us the best experts out there, make Gen X the go-to experts when it comes to AI, if possible. Worst case, we keep our job or we quickly get our next job. Best case is we're known as the experts to go to when a big company or small company needs an AI solution. That's my hope. So as I mentioned before, and we'll go into entrepreneurship more in detail later, because as I've talked through this, I think there's more information that I need to find, some more real world experience that will benefit you than just, what my limited experience. I do want to I'll go and talk to some real world entrepreneurs in my family, talk about the pros and cons and the risks, and see if that's something for you. Look, it's not for everybody, but I think one of the best ways that we can solve our own problem is to start our own business. As I said to my son once, you know who's the last person who gets laid off at a business? The owner of that business. So I think if we can create valuable companies, and they don't even have to be AI related, honestly, this is the focus of this podcast. But if we can create businesses where we own them, we're providing a need in the marketplace, and we have all this lifetime of experience and understanding and interpersonal skills, and we can leverage those in the business workspace, no matter whether it's technical, IT related, retail related, or isn't technologically reliant, let's say. Our generation can tackle this. Look, Gen X is 15 years in from beginning to end. So there are some people nearing retirement that are just needs to find the next 5-year thing. And then there's some people who, they need a 15-year solution or a 20-year solution or a 25-year solution, depending on what's going to be Social Security at that time they retire. So one of the best ways that you can solve your problem is to be your own boss. There's a lot of risk involved in that. So again, I'm not an expert in any of these things. You should investigate all of this. But the key to any of these solutions when it comes to entrepreneurship is finding that hole in the market, big or small, and then fulfilling that need in that marketplace and being the expert of that in that marketplace, and then naturally expand beyond that. But we'll get more into that. I want to get some real world experience and maybe have some people come on and be interviewed. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out. But entrepreneurship, investigate it. Again, Cody Sanchez, good person to listen to. Alex Hermosi on YouTube's a really good person to listen to. He's a really good communicator of business ideas and entrepreneurial efforts. They're a good place to start if you're interested in that, because the younger Gen Xers, and they have a lot more work life ahead of them. So let's clear the path so that no matter where you are in the Gen X timeline, we can continue to be successful. All right, listen, as I mentioned before, I have this Skool community. It's free to sign up. So come over, sign up. I'll have documents here to download. All the previous documents that are available to download on the previous episodes are going to be available there on the Skool community. The link there is in the show notes. Come to the community. Let's build a really solid network. Let's be each other's advocates. Let's mentor each other. Let's help each other because we're Gen X. We can solve anything if we work together. So let's get started. All right. I'll see you guys next time.